You're listening to Wildlife Control Consultant, where we provide research-based information on all things related to vertebrate pest management.
Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of the Wildlife Control Consultant podcast. Hey, thanks for joining us. If you're wondering what we're all about research-based information on all things related to vertebrate pest management, that is animals with a spine. So this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about the TerraTrap. This is a relatively new device, and it's certainly a new device to me. I had the opportunity to test this product, do a little pilot study to see if it would work on Richardson ground squirrels. Now, why did I do that? Well, because I saw an advertisement from Goodnature that said that this device was used for the control of California ground squirrels and that they had success with that. So I was like, will it work on our Richardson's ground squirrels here in Montana? So they sent me one, and I had a chance to try it out. It's not the best time of the year for me to try it out. Started in July and just ended about a week or so ago. And I was able to finally get one. And so again, not the best time of year because the field that I was doing my pilot study in, the ground squirrels were not as abundant as I was led to believe by the landowner, and some of the ground squirrels seem to have been going into hibernation or estivation a little bit earlier than I anticipated. So it required me to move it around a lot. Nevertheless, make a long story short, we were able to demonstrate that the trap works on Richardson ground squirrels, but I really want to give it a better go around next year when they come out of hibernation. So I wanted to just sort of introduce you to it. And let's talk about it. Again, that's the TerraTrap from Goodnature. Now you'll recall we've talked about the Goodnature trap before. It is a repeating trap that uses a captive bolt that when the rodent sticks his head up into a cylinder, it hits a button, or I should say a little rod, that causes a captive bolt to hit them in the head, and then they drop out, and then it resets. So here is the device. This basically, it's sort of like a large bait station, but made into the form of a mountain to kind of make it, to hide it a little bit. This is where the entrance is. And this is the locking mechanism in the top. So it's not as locking as, some of your bait stations would be for rodenticides. I'm not sure it needs to be, but you need to be aware of the fact that a kid who, it doesn't take too much intelligence to figure out how to just pull the pin and then just lift off the lid, right? So let me kind of lift it off here. And there you go, right? So just to kind of show you that it's hollow inside there. Let me put this down. And this is basically the working guts of the trap. And there you go, right? So this is the A18. This is a more powerful version of some of you may be familiar with the A24. So the A24 means it gives you 24 strikes, and the A18 means you only have 18 strikes, but this is a little bit heavier duty. It's designed for ground squirrels, and of course it will work on rats as well. Here is the cylinder, the carbon dioxide cylinder, and the plunger is here, and this is where the bait is located. And the bait for the ground squirrels here was basically unhulled peanuts. So I'm going to take this out. This is the bait container that comes with it. And let me try to pull this out here. I haven't pulled it out since I've put it in, so bear with me here as I try to figure out how to get this device out of the... All right, sorry about that. Figured out how to take it out of the device. So as I already told you before, there's the bait area. The rodents have to stick their head up into this device, up into this hole here, and then they hit that pin. I'm not going to put my finger in there. So you've seen the pin. That has to be touched by the nose of the rodent. Then the striker bar comes across and hits them in the head, and then they drop out. So the way this is situated here is it's going to look in there, it's going to be in there like this. So the ground squirrel is going to come up inside. Ground squirrel is going to come up inside, try to get to the bait here, get struck by the rod, and then of course he'll be dead right here. And then the idea is that a scavenger will come and grab the ground squirrel and take it away, and it resets for another one. Now, how do you know how many times it is fired? Well, there is a counter that comes with it as well, and it relies, I believe, on motion because of the striker rod that goes. So if you look carefully, you should see a number there. And that shows you how many times it's fired. In this case, it should have been 1. Okay. So what's the process for starting this? Well, first you're going to put this out into an area where the ground squirrels are located, and then you're going to bait this with either bird seed, such as this. It's basically a mixture of corn, sunflower seeds, and I think that's it. Corn and sunflower seeds. Pretty simple. Corn and sunflower seeds. And I also baited it with whole peanuts. And the idea being is you pour those in and around here after you take some soil from the ground squirrel porch. That's the area, that's the excavated soil that they're defecating in. Make sure you're wearing gloves. And you kind of smear that around this location and then put some in front of the hole. And then, of course, you need to anchor this in order to keep it stable. So there's various holes. There's one there. Various holes to anchor it with. Now, they give you these plastic stakes, but as you can see, I had a little bit of trouble putting it into some of our hard Montana soil. So I am not a fan of these, and I've told the manufacturer I wouldn't even provide them. So I used basically sort of these 7-inch nail spikes with a washer. And then I would pound that in at the 3 locations. So you need at least 3 of these. And then that's just to keep it stable. And then after you put your soil around, you smudging your soil around, the idea is you're trying to get some pheromones around it, is the idea. I don't know if that's perfectly required for Richardson ground squirrels, but you're trying to follow the manufacturer guidelines because it's still new in our area. They have more research for what they've done with the California ground squirrel. But nevertheless, after you do that, then you put your bait down, and then you cover it, and you put some bait down in here so that it pours out the front. The idea is you want to be able to lead them in. Now, one of the things that I did was that we took some of these whole peanuts and we actually wedged them inside the wall of the entrance of the den, just so that they couldn't miss it. And the idea is you're trying to get them to eat one, to get familiar with it, and to realize, hey, this is great food. And then as they're foraging around, hopefully they'll find the stash. And then they'll come up in here, grab the food. And when you start seeing them grabbing the food in here, then you ultimately bait the trap and then place the trap here. And then cover it over again. Pretty cool. Now, I was nervous. I'm a nervous Nelly. And I was nervous about non-target animals. And we did have a lot of magpies stealing my bait. And they will really, but what I found was they will not go in probably past here along this trap. Because remember, when I'm leaving, it has everything on. So they only come in about halfway, not to where they're not going to bend their head up and push their head up into this. So I haven't found that, but they will steal a fair amount of bait. So using a trail camera can be helpful in determining whether or not it's actually ground squirrels that are consuming some of your food. But if this is all removed here, it's got to be ground squirrels. Because if you have mice, they're not going to be able to consume that much in a single day. And so when we started getting some action from our ground squirrel, they cleared it out. And then we rebaited and they cleared it out again. So, and then we trapped that third time, and that's when we got them. So that's basically how it works. Now, whether it is, how far will it draw ground squirrels to it? I don't know. How will another ground squirrel come to it after another ground squirrel has died there? Don't know, because we stopped after one because it's too late in the season right now. So you can see we have some research to go in terms of trying it out. But at minimum, I know that it will take a Richardson ground squirrel. So it's kind of neat. I do wonder whether or not it needs to have this whole system here. I do think that maybe using a cage system. I still want the tunnel involved here, but I don't know if it needs to be all of this. I think a cage system that would allow you to have food out here in the cage area, but still force them to come in toward it. Would be advantageous, also be a lot less expensive, because this entire setup is over $400. I believe it's actually $500. That's a fair amount of money. But the technology is here. Unfortunately, these particular CO2 canisters are specialized. You can't just go to your local hard gun shop and get a CO2 container for like your pellet rifles or something and put that in here. So it's an expensive endeavor. But with the growing concern about the use of rodenticides and the greater regulation that's occurring with rodenticides, we may be moving toward this down the road. And of course, as people maybe have small infestations, a lot of our rodenticides are not allowed on residential lawns. So this may be a better alternative given the fact that it will kill a ground squirrel and it has the opportunity to get the next one as well without having to deal with a live animal and then disposing of it and killing it or whatever. So this is where this device could have a niche product, particularly in areas that are dealing with residential lawns or where people aren't going to be around long enough to sort of check equipment. Because you always want, whenever you're setting traps that aren't lethal like this, you need to be checking your traps, and so you want to make sure of that. So again, the Terra Trap, TERRATRAP, the Terra Trap, which uses the A18 Goodnature trap. Kind of impressive. So stay tuned. We'll see what it allows for the future. I would love to know if this works on our bushy-tailed wood rat, whether bushy-tailed wood rats will go in. My suspicion is they will, but I haven't had the opportunity to try that out as well. So that's it for this week. The Terra Trap by Goodnature, or in America, the distributing company is called the Automatic Trap Company. Something you may want to check out. You may find you need to use that on your own. Again, I'm Stephen Vantassel. You've been listening to the Wildlife Control Consultant Podcast. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell, and if you have questions, comments, yes, even criticisms, thoughts, or suggestions for new shows, reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Yes, even criticisms. And of course, we're always looking for guests for our shows. If you're interested in being a guest, do check out my podcast on being a guest on the show. And if you're still interested, we'd love to hear from you. Just a final note here. I'm not being paid by Automatic Trap Company to talk about this particular trap, but they did send me this version for my work with it, so I didn't have to pay for it, thank goodness. But I'm not being paid by them to talk about this particular trap. So bottom line is, it did work in catching a ground squirrel for me, and I'm looking to try it out some more and get a little bit more rigorous work in better conditions, hopefully next year. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care, everyone.